Thank you very much, Holly. I want to start off really by following Tarek and by saying that we should, I think, be really quite excited about this weekend. We are about to launch a Left of Labour political organisation, and it will immediately become the biggest Left of Labour political party that we've ever seen in this country, with more than 50,000 members signed up. So I think we should rightly be excited at that. The second thing I want to agree with Tarek as well is that the time for this has never been more necessary. If you think about it, we have had 40 years of what's now called neoliberalism, where our utilities and services have been sold off, in which inequality has grown exponentially. We're now one of the most unequal countries in this world. And we have got a fantastic democratic deficit because none of the existing political parties disagree that the way forward is to let the rich get richer, the poor get poorer, and to keep all our services privatised. There is no voice that really speaks up against that, and so we have a democratic deficit. And the third thing about that is that into that democratic deficit, the charlatans of reform have stepped forward and claimed that they are the ones who represent ordinary working class people and disenfranchised people in this country. And it's time for us in your party to step forward, to take that on, and to prove that we're actually the anti-establishment voice in this country, speaking up for ordinary working class people. So I think we should start off by recognising the excitement and the potential that your party has. 50,000 members is fantastic. But of course, the other aspect of this is that in some senses, all of us on this call today will be slightly disappointed that it's only 50,000. Because when Zara and Jeremy announced that they were setting up the party, we had 800,000 people who were initially interested, wanted to be on the email list, and were interested in getting involved in some way. Now, we were never going to get 800,000 members, but it doesn't seem to me unthinkable that we could have had half that. 400,000 would have made us the biggest political party in Britain. Yet we aren't at 400,000, we're at 50,000. It's good, but it's not nearly as good as it could or perhaps should have been. And I think we've got to recognise that part of the reason for that is really a reflection of the infighting at the top of your party since its initial launch. We have had 2 portals for membership. I'm sure, like many of you, I think I'm a your party member twice. I'm certainly paying 2 sorts of fees to 2 different portals. So we had 2 membership portals set up. We had briefing against each other. We had a group of 3 colleagues who, completely out of their control, suddenly found themselves being threatened with legal action by those around the centre, around Jeremy. That was nothing that was to do with them, but they found themselves there. We had counter-legal action being threatened. And we need to start off by saying absolutely clearly that in a left socialist party, we do not resort to the courts and we do not threaten legal action against each other. But that definitely had an impact on your party. It led quite quickly to significant levels of demoralisation or people misunderstanding what was going on. It's absolutely right to say that in a party like your party, there should be healthy political debate. Nobody's shunning away from that. But we can't have one group controlling aspects of the apparatus and using that against others to try and shut this thing down. So on both sides of the divide, I think we have had political impulse, we have had accusation and counter-accusation, we have had the drawing of red lines where, frankly, there didn't have to be red lines between Zara's team and Jeremy's team. And all of it, I think, has created a space that Zach Polanski has moved into. And I think we can look at Zach Polanski and the Greens and the growth of the Greens and say that actually the 100,000 people who have joined the Greens are actually our 100,000. They should be with us. They probably were originally with us. But our fight amongst ourselves led some of them to move towards the Greens. Now, I do think we can win them back. And I think this weekend we need to start the process of winning those people back. But to do that, we have to have a vision of what your party is like. And at the moment, we have this false Team Jeremy, Team Zara approach, and both of them have models which I think are wrong. So Jeremy's team at the moment, I think, want to almost recreate a Labour Party Mark II. I'm not sure that that's necessarily Jeremy's position, but it is absolutely the position of those round about Jeremy. Those who were heavily involved before in the office of when he was the leader of the opposition, Lotto, the leader of the opposition's office, and those who have used, as we've seen over the last couple of months, the most bureaucratic methods brought in from trade union operations to try and make sure that they control your party, that they control the run up to the conference, that they control conference and conference selection in and of itself. One of the things that we got out of this was sortition, and I know this week that Jeremy said that he favoured sortition because people with egos were upset that they didn't get to conference. I'm not sure who he was talking about. If he was talking about me, I'm not all that bothered about going or not going, but I do think we should have a conference that is selected by branches where people are accountable and where we try to bring the experiences of all the independent groups across the country. We bring the experiences into conference because it's vital for us to learn from them and to think about how we can generalise from the good experiences. And that, to me, is what a conference should be about. The other interesting thing about sortition is that on the original steering group of 30 members who had that initial breakdown between Zara and Jeremy and the initial fallout, I don't think any of those 30 have been sortitioned. And I just ask a question, what are the chances of those 30 not managing to get one person selected by sortition? And that's the problem with sortition. Who controls it? Who's making those kind of selections? So on the one hand, we've got the drive for a very bureaucratic top-down model, a Labour Party Mark II, that will speak to the masses, of course, that will speak about those things, but everything will be funneled primarily through Parliament. And if there are social movements and connections with social movements, those social movements are primarily there as a well to go and get members from, but not an integral part of what we see as our vision of a radical political party. On the other hand, we've got the Team Zara, and what I think has happened over the last few months is to try and polarise questions, to try and draw out the differences in politics. Zara has tacked towards many of the groups around the far left, and the consequence of that is that we have, unfortunately, in my opinion, ended up with a whole host of red lines which in reality don't make sense to me. So one of those is that we should be anti-Zionist and we should not have anything to do with anybody who wants a two-state solution. Now, for my own part, I have been a supporter of the Palestinian cause since 1982 when I was involved in my first Palestine demonstration. And I am a one-stater, if you like. I believe in Palestine should run from the river to the sea. And I am an anti-Zionist. But if you look at the Palestinian Authority, if you look at the Palestinian ambassador to Britain, he's a supporter of a two-state solution. I would want people like him to be in your party and have the debate on why I think a two-state solution is not a viable solution. But it shouldn't be a red line which throws those people out. That would be silly, because those people will be on the demonstration this Saturday. Those people will have been on most of the Palestinian demonstrations. They're not the enemy. They are people that we should debate and work together. And frankly, we all want a ceasefire. We all want to isolate Israel. We all want to make sure that the Palestinians have equal rights in that part of the world. So those are perfectly good starting points from us. So we shouldn't draw red lines where red lines don't exist. We shouldn't tack towards a sort of glorified socialist alliance of the far left, which excludes vast numbers of ordinary working class people. In my opinion, we want to be talking to the millions, the working class disenfranchised and the disenfranchised millions in those excluded working class communities in every town and every city. We've got to provide a voice for them. And the way to do that, it seems to me, is to have a relatively limited programme around some clear and serious demands that unites us around the 80% that we agree with, and on the 20% where we have disagreements, then we create a safe space where people can have those discussions in a fraternal manner. Somebody asked me about, well, what is the 80-20% at a meeting that I was at the weekend? Well, let me give you two examples. I live in Preston. I come from Scotland. I am a supporter of Scottish independence, but my view is that your party should have a position in Scotland which says that we are for a referendum, that the Scottish people in the Scottish Parliament should have the right to call a referendum. But your party shouldn't split on whether you are pro-independence or anti-independence. It doesn't really matter if you're against the bosses, if you want redistribution, if you're in favour of better taxation. You might think that that will come through an independent Scotland. You might not. That's not the red line. We agree with the right to vote, but the specifics of it shouldn't be something that we split on. So that would be the 20%. Or I also think the same with regard to the EU and Brexit. There are some people who want to rerun that, and there are some people who are not. That shouldn't be a red line within it. We can have that debate. Personally, I don't think we should run that debate. I think by rerunning that debate, we will separate ourselves from vast working class communities who hate the EU, but weren't necessarily tied up with the racism of those who wanted to blame migrants in that way. So that should be something that's part of the 20% that we can discuss. It is a safe space, but we don't have, as a party, to have a complete programmatic agreement on those things. So a flexible approach around the 80-20%. And I think we have to take that as our starting point for this weekend. So the final thing I'd like to say is that this weekend, some of us will be placing a motion into conference. We hope that they will take that at conference. At the moment, they have ruled it out, but we will try to take it from the floor. And it calls for an interim leadership to run your party in a more sensible way with less factionalism, tries to bring people together in unity around that 80%. And that it's only there, that new temporary leadership is only there for 6 months. The purpose of that is to get us to a conference where branches will send delegates and we can set the thing up on a more democratic basis that Tarek was talking about. And my hope, both Jeremy and Zara will be part of that collective leadership, but there will be other people on that collective leadership who have got a starting point of the need for unity, the need for us to build your party around the 80%, and the need for us to make your party the party that represents ordinary working class people, north, south, east and west, that fills a democratic deficit and that starts to go out into those working class communities and say that we are the anti-establishment voice, we are the radical insurgent party, we take on reform, we win the council seats, we win the parliamentary seats when they come up, and we start to put the argument forward for a proper, social democratic, deeply reformist, radical insurgent party of the left. Thank you.